Hello, guys, and welcome back to a new episode of In Conversation with CloudSense, hosted by myself, Alex Mason, Product Marketing Manager here at CloudSense. And this week is a special episode as we welcome back Vish Kumar, who needs no introduction at this point. But Vish, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. And a special welcome to Rama Syahrul, VP of Services here at CloudSense. Rama, welcome to the podcast. How are you? You also well?
Thank you very much, Alex. I'm well. Very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. So we continue with our overarching theme of omnichannel experiences. Rama, I'm going to come to you first. What are the latest trends in customer demand with omnichannel digital experiences that you're seeing? Previously, it was all about visibility and customer 360. Are you still seeing the same, or have things changed?
It's a good question. I guess omnichannel isn't exactly something that's very new. I think we've all seen and heard about this topic and concept for a very long time. And if I cast my mind back, I don't know, Vish, 20, 15 years ago, right? It was all about customer 360. It was all about visibility, right? How do we get a unified view of the customer was a struggle for most companies and organizations. But, I think customer expectation continues to shift. I think digital, right? In particular, the bar is set very high across all industries. And now it has evolved into, how about moving into a more seamless experience across the different channels? So then context switching and channel switching becomes really, really important. But now it's evolved again, right? With the advent of AI, the advent of virtual reality and augmented realities. The expectation is it is based on our ability to predict and anticipate those interactions across different channels, right? To dictate what channel, what actions those customers may require before they actually reach out. So I think it has shifted and the goalpost has shifted a lot.
Okay, great. And what would you say the barriers that prevent organizations from meeting this challenge?
I think the barriers are unfortunately very familiar, right? They're quite traditional in a sense. If you all look at what does AI require, for example, right, to achieve that vision of omnichannel, it requires clean data set. It requires data integrity and data quality across the architecture. I think now it's more important than ever, right, that LLM have access to these reliable and clean integrated data about the customer, their services, their history, their interactions. Secondly, I think the traditional siloed architecture that a lot of organizations struggle with, their investment over the years has been delineated by product families and services. And these are independent. Often they're not integrated. They're not geared towards a seamless experience across these silos. That becomes a challenge. That becomes a technical debt that you have to overcome. Lack of a unified commerce platform. How do you go to market today? I mean, if you're going to market with 5 different ways of pricing a product, 6 different ways of submitting an order, of course, these are going to be challenging for you to create a seamless digital and omni-channel experience across the different verticals and the different channel of interaction. The other thing is, I think, real-time access to information. Again, if the shift of the trend, expect that can not only channel shift, but you can augment your experience across all channels. Then all channels requires access to data that are accurate, but also timely. So what that means is you need access to information, processes, and workflow that traditionally probably weren't available to be done in a synchronized manner. So in the industry that we work with, like telco, this would include things like inventory checking and reservation, location services, usage that are real time, information about accounts and billing that are completely up to date. So then that reliance on real time API become more and more important. And that's a challenge for a lot of people. And I think lastly is often there's lack of connected customer centric end state in mind. We live in a very distributed world these days, where every business unit, every stakeholder, every platform has its own independence. And what it often creates is isolated journey for individual channels, individual functions and domain. And when you stitch it up all together, end to end, it may not work together. It might not create a seamless experience. So sometimes organizations have to step back and be fully customer centric in their approach and drive their program of work and delivery from a customer perspective and from an end state user journey point of view.
Completely agree with you, Rama. I think the other part, probably to elaborate on that, is also around the fact that when you look at the change in the way that you're actually going to create these new experiences, many of the customers we work with, probably, I wouldn't call the word scared, but they're unsure of what the actual outcome will be. And it forms a very big barrier because we get asked the same question quite often is, where have we done this before? And with Omnichannel, every telco is slightly different. Their processes are completely different. And then the experiences with a clear view of what that end state needs to look like is something that a lot of them are challenged with in terms of they understand what they want it to look like, but are not very clear on the change management processes. And at times, what other systems need to be pulled in to actually make this work properly, to really get it going. And that does form a very, very large barrier to how they actually address this properly in the market.
Yeah, you actually raise a very good point, Vish, around change management, because you're not just changing your internal operating model and processes, you're expecting to change the way that your customer interact. And often that's something to be like second fiddle or second priority in every delivery, is how do you actually handhold your customers as you navigate through the change in a disruptive manner. And there will be some pain points that they have to be tolerant of before the end state, nirvana can be achieved. And that's quite a complex undertaking.
Okay, great. Super great points from both of you there. As we all know, delivery and technology investment are inherently risky. What would you say the delivery challenges are, and what are the key success factors that ensure omnichannel success? So Rama, I'll come to you first here.
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? I guess, how do you approach delivery in an omnichannel context? Is it different to every other platform technology delivery initiative? I guess if you pare it back, what's the constraint involved in delivering omnichannel? I would say it involves stitching together disparate technology that typically is not pre-integrated together. We're talking sales, we're talking assurance, we're talking service, we're talking order management and delivery. It means also trying to stitch together different channels that are completely independent. From an operating model and business, stakeholder perspective, often run separately. So direct channel, wholesale, partner, mobile workforce. You might have some shop fronts that complement your digital experience as well. And then we are also dealing with technology with different types of constraints. So effectively, you combine this together, you got an old school system integration problem. So what are the success criteria and factors? I would say probably going back to basics, right? So things like multi-speed delivery becomes important. These platforms that you're dealing with, they change and they evolve and they can be configured and customized at different pace. I guess those of you who have done delivery a lot probably understands that some platforms requires waterfall delivery, interface contract driven design and implementation. Others lends itself more to more agile and iterative way of working, where you can do A/B testing, quickly fail, pivot and change. So now you're trying to stitch them together. Well, you need to have a program of work that can manage delivery at different speeds. I would say loosely coupled architecture becomes a critical success factor. If your platforms and technology are all tightly coupled together, that every single minute of change has cascading impact across it, and you need to test regression, do impact assessment to 50 platforms every time you make a change, then doing something as complex as omnichannel is going to delay and make that process a lot longer. I think enterprise architecture is also a key component here. I think sometimes I laugh with my team where every man and his dog or person and their dogs, right? call themselves an architect as soon as they can design something. I think it's a bit of a lost art in modern delivery practices where we have these large software companies that create ecosystems. And therefore, people tend to design, architect, and solve problem as a point solution. So now, working in a dynamic and decentralized world, you need the traditional enterprise architecture rigor of the past, whereby you are trying to stitch platforms that were potentially was not designed to be stitched together. I think I touched upon customer-centric approach. That's really important. If you don't keep that end-to-end user journey in mind, how the customer change is going to, the change journey is going to evolve, then the likelihood is going to be very, very painful to enact that change. You end up with disparate user journey. You end up with customer NPS scores, not promoter scores that are less than favorable. The symptoms will be, oh, we don't like the user experience. Well, unfortunately, it wasn't a customer-centric approach in the design phase. I think I touched upon data a little bit. So I think in order to be successful, you need to have a robust, data architecture and data management. You need to pull together data and information across different platforms and across different domains. And you're trying to feed your predictive analytics, feed your AI engine, and you're trying to surface it across a myriad of different channels. So a strong data architecture and domain expertise is going to be critical. And lastly is, I think a problem like Omnichannel is one of those things that touches different aspects of the organization at the same time. So if you were about to embark on something like this, the likelihood is you need to assemble business stakeholder across a wide range of discipline. Billing, product managers need to be there, sales, marketing, legal. So what it means is it becomes sort of a business decision making that is going to dictate the pace in which you can deliver. It's not, technology, it's not technical. So you need empowered decision makers that can raise a design decision that has cascading impact across the business. And therefore representation from each domain is important, and a decision-making process and forum that facilitate business decision-making, not just an architectural one, also critical. You probably remember a lot of our implementation, we always recommend our customers to set up a business architecture forum or a business decision forum that are chaired by stakeholders who are empowered to make a call.
Correct. It's extremely important for that forum, because the other part, I guess, with that empowerment is also ensuring that the team are all signing up to common goals. So many times we've seen deliveries go through, they get pushed into production, but they're not meeting the goals that the business actually wanted. Whereas having that forum and having that decision maker in place ensures that the technical and the business are aligned all the way through. And there's a common goal between all of them to make sure that the experience is there, the overall architecture is met, and everyone understands the trade-offs that are being made throughout that whole process.
Yeah, I think that's right. And also we have to remember that changes will happen as you discover and break barriers and new grounds. There will be assumptions and design decisions of the past that may no longer apply. And therefore, these forums provide the means to have a structured way to resolve that, to assess the priority, to ensure that, to your point, Vish, that the vision is still hold true and that the business benefit for customers and the organization is still going to be realized at the end of the day.
Great. And what about sequencing? How do you think organizations should plan the phasing approach to transition customers and products, as well as operating models towards an omnichannel world?
This is probably the most common question that our customers and people in the industry ask us. I think people think there might be a silver bullet that somehow unlock a faster time to value with regards to omnichannel delivery. But if I carry it back again to the basics, ultimately you are constrained to some pretty basic delivery parameters here. Number one is You can only deliver product by product. So there needs to be a sequence of how we unlock that. Number two is obviously we want to deliver capability and functionality incrementally. So there's always going to be technical, natural dependency of what needs to be delivered before another thing. And then lastly is, I guess you probably want to promote a modular design where it promotes reuse. If I deliver a particular product as a foundation in phase one, you want that to unlock certain bundles, certain intelligent network solution in the second phase, and you promote reuse and build upon what you built previously. But if I look at how to sequence, the consulting answer is actually, it depends. There are different factors that organization has to prioritize. I'll take an example. So some customers focuses on new code versus old code. Maybe the driver for the transition into a new omnichannel architecture is we need to partition and ring fence legacy, and we need to protect the new code from the complexity of the past. And therefore, you want to focus and prioritize products you are bringing to market and you're trying to disrupt the market with. Sometimes cost takeout is the main priority. You can't afford the current cost to serve in the current operating model. And therefore, you want to focus on the product, channel, business unit, and teams that has a significant volume of workload and transactions. Sometimes there's a burning platform. Customer of mine is going live shortly, and their burning platform is they've got a legacy architecture that is out of support, and therefore getting significant volume of instances migrated forms a prioritization in which they want to move into the new omnichannel world. Sometimes there are customers who are focusing on market protection, churn protection. So I've worked with customers in the past where we map their distribution of revenue across the different segments, channels, and product family, and therefore create a sequencing that allows a logical grouping of the way that we serve the customer. So when we migrate them into the new omnichannel world, we know that they'll be fully supported and therefore less likely to have grievances and therefore potentially churn. So the sequencing depends on the priority, and I'm afraid there's no silver bullet.
Rama, what would you also consider around segmentations as well? So we talk about products, we talk about certain customers. I look at it, and probably some of the discussions I've had in the past is also around ensuring you look at the volume, so the high volume transacting customers. So if we're in the consumer world, potentially looking at in the younger generations who would probably interact with the online or the particular channel. In the business world, we might look at the less complex customers, how they may interact and guiding them to that. How important do you reckon we put that on some of our customers as well when we talk them through it? I know in my experience, I've always said, look at the high volume, but do you have a different take on it?
It's very important, right? Because I think you talk about change management before. Moving to a new omnichannel world has significant impact to how those customers and those segments interact. Mm-hmm. Sometimes where in the past they were supported through assisted, in the new world, that particular transaction type, we expect them to navigate through self-service, for example. So understanding your segmentation allows you to then ensure that when you transition that particular segment, a particular customer, and a particular team that serves them, you can transition them holistic. That means their servicing, their sales, their assurance are now transitioning into a new process. You minimize swivel chair for the organization, but you also minimize poor customer experience and adoption for the end users, because you're ensuring that there's a logical solution, a logical end-to-end operating model that they'll be supported. So absolutely, segmentation based on revenue, based on product, based on channel, based on segment, the churn propensity, all the dimensions that we typically work with our customer. Sometimes it can be challenging, but once, if we are able to surface them, we can then find a logical sequencing that this is challenge, but also minimize customer and operational disruption in the interim.
Great. So, Rama, I'll come to you to summarize. In your words, what would be the 3 takeaways organizations should keep in mind in order to successfully meet the challenge of omnichannel user experience?
Well, I think, first of all, I would say it is important to recognize that customer expectation has shifted. So the goalpost has moved, and therefore the way that you approach and the way that you recognize the risks and opportunities in your organization and in your architecture to make that journey is very important. That ensures that you can create an end state that is focused on the customers in mind. You create user journeys and capabilities that are customer focused, and that create assurances in terms of that investment would yield the outcome that we all strive for: customer satisfaction, operational efficiency, clean data, and being able to leverage AI, augmented reality to enhance and improve customers' engagement. I would say second thing to take away from all of this is that from a delivery perspective, your traditional system integration challenges comes into play. I think it's often a forgotten art with the advent of pre-integrated ecosystem-based platforms and architecture out there. You need to be able to go back to basics. Your enterprise architecture discipline becomes key. In an agile and distributed world, governance and structured planning and iterative planning becomes imperative. And I think lastly, and we've touched this point a couple of times, so last but not least, this is not a single domain delivery. You are dealing with multiple stakeholders, multiple domains, multiple systems that were not designed potentially or not ready to be stitched together. And therefore you need a strong program governance, and you need a strong business, decision-making framework in order to ensure that you stick to the vision of the program, you resolve open decision-making process, you avoid delays that drags delivery and programs and eventually incur delays, and make sure that you can also react swiftly as the market and the industry continue to rapidly evolve. I would say those are 3 things to keep in mind before you commence on a omni-channel user experience. What do you think, Vish?
Completely agree with those. The only one thing that I would always focus on is don't underestimate the change management. So internally and externally. The last thing you want is a situation where you've developed all this great technology and new experiences, but don't guide your customer. It's not how to use it. It's something that we have seen in the past has been interesting to watch, but it's something that you can use as a tool to really help your business and really maximize things by ensuring your customers and your team know what you've just developed and how great it is for them.
Agree.
Well, look, thank you so much both. Fantastic conversation, fantastic insights. Vish, as always, thank you so much for joining. And Rama, we really hope you enjoyed your first episode on the podcast. We hope to bring you back in the future. And guys, keep your eyes peeled as we will be recording episode 3 very shortly. Thanks, guys.